You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast. My guest is Cedric Savarese. He's the CEO and founder of FormAssembly. The website is also FormAssembly.com. So Cedric, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Richard. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so tell me about FormAssembly. What's the premise of the company?
Yeah, so FormAssembly is a platform that organizations can use to collect data through online forms and surveys. So it's designed to streamline their business processes. And beyond just the data collection piece, our goal is to help our customers be good stewards of the personal information that they're collecting through our platform.
So these are forms that people fill in online where they enter, regular data like name, date, maybe address, things like that. But what other data do people enter online into forms that's useful and why?
Yeah, so it can be any sort of online form. So from maybe a waiver that you're going to fill out to attend a particular event or send your kids to a camp, to online application to apply to a school. And if you went to college, you've probably seen forms that are huge, dozens of pages and hundreds of questions to answer. So our platform allows our customers to really cover all those different use cases, from simple contact forms to surveys to very complex online applications.
So, all right. So you create online forms, but are you doing anything special with the data that comes from them? Are you parsing it in some way or processing it?
Yeah. So our goal is to provide a self-service platform that our customers can use on their own. There's really no technical skills required. And through our platform, they can be up and running very, very quickly without needing to get developers or their IT involved. So we provide that data collection service, and then we help our customers use the data by pushing the data where they want to work with it. Sometimes a lot of our customers use Salesforce, so they want the data in Salesforce, or they want it in Excel or some other places. And we also provide additional services and add-ons that help them make sure that keep their data secure, make sure they comply with data privacy laws like HIPAA for healthcare data in the US, or the GDPR regulation, which is something new that came out of the European Union. So we try to provide a suite of services and solutions around that data collection piece.
So is it, what are some of the issues around forms and collecting data that you're solving? Do people tend to spam forms? Do you double check it's a valid email, for instance? I mean, what kinds of things do you do?
Yeah, so there's a lot of business logic that you can build into the forms for your particular use case. So if you collect an email address, you want to make sure the email address actually works and there's a real person behind that email. You want to make sure you're not getting spam or collecting junk data. So there's services that we provide around that. If you look at it from the point of view of the person who actually fill out the form, it's typically not something really exciting to do. So you want to make sure that it's as easy and streamlined as possible, that you're not entering the information twice or something that you already entered in your last visit. they shouldn't really ask for the same information again. So having the forms being smart enough to know what data you already have and you already provided, and not ask for that information again, skip questions that are not relevant. And then, when you share personal information through a form, there's a lot of trust issues, right? You want to make sure that the company you are submitting the information to is going to handle that data properly, responsibly, and so there's tools that we provide through the forms and through the data collection that can help with that. So through disclosure, through data privacy statements and so on.
Any issues with GDPR or HIPAA, or when people fill in forms, any special things you have to do that you don't have to do otherwise?
Yeah. So to comply with HIPAA or to comply with the GDPR, the organization that use that need to collect data need to be working with service providers that follow certain standards, that meet certain criteria, and we worked hard to meet those standards. So whether it's HIPAA or GDPR, we have worked throughout the years to reach those standards. So whether it's training our team on data privacy issues, providing features that help with the obligations under the GDPR, having the right contractual agreements with our customers and so on, making sure, for instance, that we don't resell the data. All those kind of form the whole package around compliance.
1 second. So what you take the data and are you storing it in databases and parsing it, using it for marketing, or are you just like relaying it to different platforms?
No, we just collect on behalf of our customers. We're not what the customers really eventually do with the data is really up to them. So to give you an example, the Boston Athletic Association runs the Boston Marathon, which is one of the most prestigious race in the world, and the registration process is powered through FormAssembly. If you're a runner and you want to register for the race, you go through the application online, and it's a surprisingly complex process where you have to not only just provide information about yourself, but also provide information about the other races that you've done and the times that you achieved, and in order for you to be able to know if you qualify for this race, because it's pretty competitive. It's like 30 to 40,000 people who apply to run the race every year, and so all this business logic that checks and validate that the time that you ran another race is actually correct, because there's a database behind it that has the listing of all the results for all the races in the prior year. So that through FormAssembly, through that registration process, now you're able to sign up for the register for the race and right away get a reply whether or not you would qualify for that race and you're in or not.
Yeah. So what's with forms right now? It sounds like there's a big disconnect between inputting the data and comparing it to historical things people have put in, or comparing it to existing customer database, or even interfacing it with a database. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the typical example is when you go see the doctor and you fill out the same form every time, where they keep asking you for your insurance information and so on, right? When the forms in your process, your intake process in this case, when it's properly integrated with backend in the database, which you can do through FormAssembly, then you're able to really streamline that process a lot more, right? So you don't have to alter the information again.
Would you have insight into why anyone would use paper forms, especially in today's day and age? Is it a HIPAA thing, or is it just like we're afraid of technology thing, or what's the reason?
I think it's just a lack of if your paper process is working and you don't necessarily have the technical resources, maybe you just think it's just a lot more work than it actually is to move to an electronic format, and that's why we created FormAssembly in the first place. Is just to make it very, very easy for someone who's not technical at all, but who is actually the stakeholder. It's the person who needs that process to be more efficient, right? If you work with paper forms, you're probably doing double entry. That is, you're getting the information paper and then you're typing it somewhere else on the computer.
Right.
Plus, it's not something you can search and archive very well. So yeah, it's probably just maybe just a lack of awareness, like how easy it can be to really move to an online process.
Well, also too, there's errors. If anything on paper that has to be transcribed in the computer, well, now you've got someone else typing it in. So if it's an email address that's weird, or if the person's penmanship is bad, or handwriting is unreadable, you'll make mistakes.
Exactly. If you try to read my handwriting, you're probably going to have some trouble there.
Yeah, like my kids see my signature every once in a while and they go, "That's not your name. It just looks like a little scribble." I said, "Well, it's evolved over the years to become that." But it's just an example. A lot of people don't write very much anymore. And I know a lot of people don't even know cursive, and I don't know. Yeah, it's just crazy to use paper, but they still do it. So
they still do it. Yeah.
So any other insights from this hookup? Unexpected things that you've learned about the way people fill forms or the data you're getting. Anything that jumps out at you?
Well, I think what was really unexpected is to see how many different use cases there is for a product like ours. We have customers that are anywhere from a small nonprofit community theater in Raleigh who just put out a few shows a year, and they have, they need a form to collect donations and sell tickets to events, And on the other side, there are Fortune 500 type companies who has pretty much unlimited budget and could purchase any sort of, software solution or even build their own, and they still prefer to use a product like ours because it's just so simple to use, and it can be for them. It's a lot more important to be up and running quickly than it is to.
Is there an ideal way you found to enter data? Obviously paper's not, but iPad, tapping it in, or keyboard, or mobile. Any ideal way you found that people like best, or is easiest, or has a lowest error rate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think ultimately typing or writing is always going to be a pain. It's fairly slow. Now, thankfully, on phones and iPads and even computers, you can dictate and enter data that way. It's a little bit faster. But again, I think the best is to not ask for data in the first place if you don't need it or if you already have it, right? A lot of times you see in the data collection processes, you see people asking for questions just because they can, not necessarily because they actually need and know what they're going to do with the information. And that's something that's been a little bit more highlighted by the GDPR with this idea that with the data minimization concept, where you should only really collect and store data that you actually need and nothing more than that. To go back to your question, I think that's pretty important. Like, it's going to be difficult to get people to enter information if they have to type it or handwrite it. Especially if it's personal information, sensitive information. So the best you can do is just minimize the information that you collect.
Okay. Things I've noticed about filling in forms, if you make an error, well, certain fields, like let's say I'm going to enter a phone number in, I like when it has dashes in there automatically, and I don't have to either put them in or not put them in,
Right.
If I fill in a field or I forget to fill one in, and I click submit, sometimes it erases the whole form, which is Usually like government websites are like that. They're the freaking worst.
Yeah.
Then there's the font size. Can I see it? Can I zoom in on it? Is there explanations of certain fields that I may not understand what they're asking? What are some best practices that you've seen, so people don't get upset or frustrated or abandon the form?
Yeah, that's a very good point. That's something really important, right? The user experience as you fill out the form has to be the best you can do, and out of the box, you're gonna have most of that through FormAssembly. So we do a lot on behalf to automate it, so that it doesn't have to be either built from scratch or added as a additional features. So we try to put a lot out of the box, and then we provide guidance and best practices on how to just organize your form, right? To make it easier to collect the information. I'm pretty now that I think about it, I know that one of the key drivers that led me to actually start working on this was me trying to fill out my state taxes in Indiana at the time, and I remember very, very, very vividly being really pissed off at the form that I was trying to fill out because it wouldn't accept some piece of information like a zip code or whatever it was in the format that I wanted to enter it, which felt to me was the right format, but it turned out that they wanted something slightly different that didn't match, and I clearly remember thinking, there got to be a better way to do that. Like, I have an engineering background, a developer background, so I knew how to write code to build forms and collect data, and I knew that this is not something that you wanted to build from scratch every time. As a developer, it's pretty tedious work. It's like kind of reinventing the wheel every time, right? So so it's much better to just use a tool that do that for you properly, so you don't have to think about it. So yeah, you need to collect an email address. There's going to be a validation check to make sure it's a valid email address and that you're not submitting incorrect data. And it's going to work properly, right? So it doesn't give you those false positives where you're like trying to enter information in one way and it wants it in another way. We also have a built-in feature that allows you to provide a particular format. So if you're supposed to enter a social security number, it will show you exactly the format in which you're supposed to enter it, and it will correct it automatically if you put the dashes or if you don't put the dashes once. And then there's more resources available on our website on best practices around data collection.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I've had a lot of pent-up form filling frustration over the years. That's why I wanted to ask you. So is there any new exciting future things that are coming from this arena? To some people it can sound like incredibly boring. I'm sure because you're in it, it is interesting and exciting and useful, but what's new that's coming that you think will be important for people to hear about?
Yeah, so I'm going to touch on that, and it's true that it may feel like it's kind of boring because it's forms and so on. But as you just pointed out, as the person who has to interact with forms all the time, everybody has to do that. You can even go to a restaurant and have to fill out a paper form to provide your feedback about your experience, right? So it happens everywhere, right? And so it's incredibly important to make sure that that experience that is so common in everybody's life is just as good as it can get. And from the business perspective, the data that you collect is often very critical. It's what is going to guide you to improve your business, to actually execute on whatever it is that you need to do. So you have a stake in making sure that your data collection process is working well, right? So it's incredibly important for pretty much everybody involved. And so what's exciting about what we're doing? So we've been growing a lot. We've been thankful to have a large list of customers and very demanding customers that care a lot about security and privacy and the user experience. And those customers kind of motivate us to do better. So one of the things that we're working on in the short term is improving our workflow automation. So workflow is it's when multiple people need to interact with a particular form, right? So for instance, if you apply to a school, for instance, and you're going to fill out the form, then the person in the admission office is probably going to add some information to this file through an online form. That's essentially a workflow process information there. So that's kind of what we're working on the short term. And then there's a lot more that we want to do to make sure that we provide a comprehensive solution around data acquisition, data management, and compliance.
Very good. So Cedric, what's the best way for interested parties to get in touch so they can get this solution for their company?
Yeah, just go to FormAssembly.com and you can sign up for a trial. There's no credit card required. It takes 5 minutes to be up and running, and you can play with it, try it for yourself, see if it's useful. If you're part of a larger organization and you need to get IT and legal on board and so on, you can reach out to us through our website, and someone from sales is going to contact you. And we're pretty used to work with organizations of all sizes, so we have a dedicated sales team that can work with you.
Okay, very good. Well, Cedric, I appreciate you coming on the podcast, and thank you so much.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.